Flight 229, you're clear for takeoff.
Just like a flight plan, you have to know where you're going and how you will get there when you plan for retirement. Let Ryan Fleming help you chart out a course for your retirement with his intimate knowledge of financial planning and the airline industry. It's time for the Pilot's Advisor.
It's another edition of the Pilot's Advisor. Welcome to the show. Walter Storholt here alongside Ryan Fleming, financial advisor at Fleming Financial Group, serving you worldwide, but based out of Georgia. You can find us online at FlemingFG.com. Ryan, it's great to be with you this week. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, Walter. How are you doing?
Glad to hear that. I am well and looking forward to our conversation today. But before we dive into all of that, let's get some updates on you. You've been flying around to places, getting ready to spend some time at home. What's the Ryan Fleming update? Well,
I guess the big picture now is I finished up strong, but I'm going to be home for the next 4 to 5 months. I'm going to get I'm basically going to get my knees replaced and just kind of relax and heal.
Knee replacement for such a young guy sounds out of the ordinary, but you were telling me off the air it's getting a little bit more commonplace these days with the way technology is going and the level of improvement and benefit that you get from it.
Well, I don't think it's commonplace to get a full knee replacement at 42 years old, but I'm in a situation just playing too many sports over the years and probably not having the best genes when it comes to joints. It's just time to do what I got to do.
Yeah, but I know you're looking forward to the improvements and a little bit of, as you described it, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Well, absolutely, and trying to be extraordinary.
The Bionic Man. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, on the Pilot's Advisor. We'll look forward to hearing some more about that journey. I'm sure you'll be able to share with us what that is like and then the recovery process and all those kinds of things. And we wish you well through all of that, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it, Walter. I'll probably be talking to you a little bit more through the process since I won't be flying around the world. And, of course, I disclosed this to you earlier, but I think it'll be fun to let our listeners know that my other goal is, this is a guy that served 20 years in the military. I'm not going to shave, and I'm not going to cut my hair for the next couple months.
I wasn't going to bring that one up unless you wanted to. So,
well,
what's scarier, you not shaving or the knee replacements? I don't know. That's a tough call.
We might have to ask Carrie that, but she's agreed to this. She said it's kind of crazy and kind of funny right now.
I give it 2 weeks before she reverses course and requests you to go the other direction.
That might be a good over-under, to be honest with you.
We'll see what you report back in a couple of weeks. On today's show, Ryan, we're going to dive into the things that you should never assume when it comes to your financial life. If I can tell a very quick and brief story, I once had a teacher in biology, I think it was the 9th grade, and he liked to teach lessons through public humiliation in class. And there was an experiment one day where, I don't know, it was something about feeding aspirin to plants, and you had to do the experiment at home for a couple of days and then report back your findings of how aspirin affected the plant growth. I guess I didn't really notice a difference between the two plants, the one that had the aspirin and the one that didn't. So I remember kind of just putting into my little homework report that I think my dad had said something about, well, like, doesn't aspirin have caffeine in it or something like that? And so I said, oh, yeah, that sounds logical. Okay. Caffeine stunts your growth. It stunted the growth of the plant. That's what I assume happened here. So I put that in my report. So my teacher, after reading that, calls me up in front of the room and he writes the word assume up on the board. And he says, and he was from Australia. I'm not going to try and do the Australian accent here on the show, but he said, Walter, do you know what happens when you assume? It's from the whole class, and again, like 9th grade. And I'm like, no.
Oh, I could see, and he broke it down because I was about to say this.
And he broke it down, and he said, you make, and then he underlined the first 3 letters out of the next letter and the next letter.
Yep.
And everybody in class was like, oh. I was mortified, and I don't think you could get away with that in class nowadays. I think teachers would get in big trouble for something like that today. But it was.
I just heard on the radio yesterday that they're taking away Dr. Seuss. That he's not culturally. I don't know. I don't even understand
it. He's not with the times anymore. Yeah, they're at least not emphasizing Dr. Seuss. I think it was. He's not necessarily like banned books, but not part of the emphasis of children's literature anymore.
Yeah, something like that. And they were joking where, the green eggs and ham were supposed to be yellow. Like, what did we do wrong here?
Oh, wow. Well, who knows? Who knows? But in any event, it was a pretty funny lesson to learn of why you don't assume things. I was certainly embarrassed. And however insensitive it may have been for the teacher, it stuck with me and made me remember the lesson. So I think it was probably good for him to do that. I didn't mind it. In fact, I went home and told my dad about it, and he was like, well, good for your teacher. He should have called you out on that. Don't listen to me when it comes to science stuff. So it all worked out in the end. But anyway, we're going to turn that into a conversation about why you shouldn't do that as well in the financial world, why you never assume. I'm going to throw out some of the common assumptions that we hear from folks, Ryan, and I'm hoping you'll be able to break down for us why these things shouldn't be assumed.
So what you're saying is you want me to publicly humiliate
you're going to publicly
exactly, because then they'll learn the lesson, because we'll humiliate them just like you were in class.
But they'll be privately humiliated because you're not going to say their names in front of everybody. So it's a little different. I was in person on the stage being public humiliated, but that's okay. I'll spend less when I retire. That's a pretty popular one, right?
Oh, you hear that one all the time.
Where's the flaw?
Well, it depends on what your retirement looks like, but most people, especially right after they retire, the whole reason for retirement is so you can do all those things you've always wanted to do. Probably be a little bit difficult now, but traveling around the world, hiking, doing whatever, because they call those the go-go years. And well, there's a cost to that. You can't get that RV and travel. You can't fly all around the world with airline tickets without it costing money. So a lot of cases, you're spending more money in retirement initially than you think. And so to make the assumption that we're going to spend a lot less when we retire is not true most of the time.
I think the common thread through these examples, by the way, is going to be that there are consequences to assuming something incorrectly. This isn't an innocent crime, if you will. Kind of like with my, plant experiment assumption. I got a 0 on that homework assignment. There were consequences to that assumption that I made. It wasn't just a funny little side thing. No, these things have real world consequences. And yeah, if you think you're going to spend less when you retire and you assume that and then you plan for that, well, now you're basing your plan on wrong information. And again, you're going to see that thread, I think, commonly through all these different examples.
Well, and that brings up a very valid point. Like anytime we're looking at retirement planning, or I go through, on an eMoney website and talk about people's cash flow and what things are going to look like in retirement, you always do have to make some assumptions. But if you're not making proper assumptions, then none of the data works. So being realistic in a lot of these assumptions is vital. And it made me think of something else that you're talking about, how people think that they're going to spend less in retirement. But if you've watched any of those commercials where they're like glorifying retirement, have you ever noticed how they're always traveling or playing golf?
Sure. They're always doing something expensive.
Yeah, those activities aren't free. And, the other thing is time. I mean, think about how much more you probably spend on the weekends when you're not working because you have time, and time equals activities that normally cost money.
Yeah, every day in retirement isn't a Monday. Every day in retirement is a Saturday or Sunday. So there's you spend a lot more money on the weekends. I think we all can realize and identify with that. Even if maybe you don't work Saturdays, or maybe you work Saturday, Sunday, but whatever your weekend is, that's when you're spending all of your money.
And I'm very, very scared for my wife to retire and stop working, because I know that when she's not working, she's normally searching online for something to buy.
That's right. It's no longer worrying about going out to the mall or doing anything like that. It's just hop on the computer is dangerous these days to the wallet. So I'm the same way. I'm actually more disciplined when we go out to buy something. It's like there's been a mental flip now when you go out to buy something, where that used to be pressure. Oh, it's right there in my hands. I can easily take it home. It's now flipped a little bit, at least for me. When I'm in person, I'm much more, judicious. I don't know if that's the right word about what I purchase and don't. I'm able to actually say, okay, when I hold it and feel it and look at it, I'm not as enamored by it. I don't think we really need it. I'm actually, I think it's easier to say no in person now. Whereas you're online, just so many barriers are removed. You're just like, okay, yeah, we'll get it. And maybe you don't see the warts in something when you're looking at it online these days.
Well, I think that, or if I see something in person, and I'm never going to buy it in person anymore. I can go once I know the item, I can go home and research it online and probably find it cheaper.
Well, hey there. We hope you're enjoying listening to the Pilot's Advisor today. Just wanted to take a quick moment from the show to remind you that if you have any questions ever about what Ryan talks about on the program, need any assistance with your financial planning, need some guidance to get to and through retirement, or whatever financial questions might be on your mind, don't ever hesitate to reach out. The simple way to get in touch with Ryan is to pick up the phone and call or text 843-475-3038. Again, that's 843-475-3038. You can also find Ryan online at FlemingFG.com. That's FlemingFG.com. And as always, we put contact information to get in touch with Ryan in the description or the show notes section of the program. So just check it out on whatever app you're using, and it's easy to get in touch with Ryan. All right, now back to the show. All right, well, we have one good example there. I'll spend less when I retire, an assumption that is typically incorrect. And in a similar vein, this is another one, Ryan. When it comes to taxes, people will say, my taxes will be lower when I retire. Now, this assumption may have been correct back in the day, but not necessarily anymore, right?
Well, this is definitely something that we talk about, and I wouldn't bank on your taxes being lower when you retire. All the money that you're going to pull for income in a lot of cases, and especially previously, because so many people did pre-tax investing. So all that money that you pull from your 401k and your IRA, well, guess what? That's taxable. Your Social Security, if you make or have a pension, you could have up to 85% of that being taxable. And right now, income tax rates are at like a historic lows. And, been a lot of the talk lately that with this new administration that there's going to be some tax changes. So that's going to make your taxes go up. And we don't even talk about this, that a lot of your write-offs and tax deductions go away when you stop having kids in the house or they're not in school. So even though the expenses of your life move around and stuff, it does not necessarily mean that your taxes are going to be lower.
That's a great point. And just because you're not working anymore doesn't mean you're going to see the drastic change in taxes that you anticipate. So something to keep in mind.
Well, and another point, too, is was looking at this with our federal budget. And, of course, this includes Social Security and everything else. But I heard something like, and I forget what the figure was, I think it was 75 or 76% of the federal budgets already allocated to entitlement programs. And it continues to be a big thing that, is growing over time. So that money has to come from somewhere. Like I want everybody to have free everything. Yes, that'd be amazing. But somebody's going to have to pay for it. And who's going to have to pay for it is taxpayers, the ones that pay taxes. And so that alone, if we keep going in the direction we're going, or even if we do try to tackle the federal budget, is going to only increase our taxes. It has to.
Yeah, nothing is free. It's all varying levels of pay me now or pay me later. And
I love it when you say that, Walter. Pay me now or pay me later.
I had a teacher in college who said that all the time, and I hated it at the time. Pay me now or pay me later, but it certainly was reality, and that's what we need to hear sometimes, not the fluff that's out there. So remember, my taxes will be lower when I retire. A dangerous assumption there. All right, let's take it in a different direction, Ryan. Another common assumption. I need to help my kids get through college before I worry about saving for retirement. And I feel like we could plug a lot of different things into the kids get through college part of that question. It's the idea of always putting something else before we start worrying about our own retirement.
Well, it makes me think about this idea that most people have, and it's like constantly kicking the can down the street. And, I can start saving for retirement after this, or I have credit card debt, so I can't save anything until get that paid down. And I argue all the time that, you got to pay yourself first. And if you never start paying yourself first, you're never going to get to retirement. But people always have an excuse. And I watch couples that are not in a good position for retirement spend all their money trying to get their kids through college, and what they're going to do is find themselves not being able to retire. And I see this all the time.
And then you just extrapolate that example out a little bit more, Ryan. I mean, if you can't then retire, and now your kids, hey, they have no debt, they're in good shape early in life, good for them, but you might become a burden on your kids later on because you didn't set yourself up for retirement in a better position. And so it's sort of that pay me now or pay me later concept again.
Well, it is, and there's no financial aid for retirement. I mean, it's great that you want to help your kids, but make sure that you're not sabotaging yourself in the process. I don't know what changed to where everybody feels like they're bad parents if they don't pay for their kids' school and college. Because I know my parents, back in the 70s, and I guess we'll even talk about the 80s, where working your way through college was just something you did. And now it seems like there's a lot of pressure on parents to go into massive amounts of debt, or, now just student loan debt, just, hey, I want $300,000 for this education degree that I can't even use. So yeah, there's some inherent problems in the way we're thinking about kids in college and how it affects our long-term picture and long-term view for retirement.
Yeah, the landscape has definitely changed over the years. I don't think back in the 70s and 80s there was the problem of having educations that cost $300,000 for an art major and those kinds of things. It's at some universities, and so, like you said, a non-useful degree, at least in many ways, at least not tangible money right out of college in those kinds of degrees to then pay down those student loans and that debt. So some of that common sense went out the window. I remember even when I went through school, Mom and Dad, I don't think ever paid any tuition money, but they helped pay room and board, some room and board here and there. And, Dad was always trying to throw me extra 20s whenever I'd come home and visit, and, trying to help out in ways that they can, maybe helping with the meal plan and that kind of thing. But boy, it was a culmination of things. From I worked all 4 years through college, and used money saved during high school to help pay for it. Scholarships, a few loans, and then I actually was able to win some awards during college for journalism type things, and all of that money went right back into paying the tuition. And after a 4-year degree, was able to graduate with only $10,000 in debt, and then was able to pay that off in exactly 1 year with a job that paid somewhere between $19,000 and $24,000 my first year. It was my salary range coming out of college. So it can be done. It just, you got to live on the old Dave Ramsey mantra of beans and rice for a little bit, and, just kind of work hard through it all.
Well, and that's why you're on a financial advisor podcast, Walter.
That's right. That's true.
That's the way it's supposed to happen. And of course, it's not nearly as glamorous. But I would argue, the expectations of everyone has just changed. It's that instant gratification. I mean, I would argue that 90% of all kids that go to college have no clue what they want to do for their first year or two. And maybe you should go to the community college and get those basic core classes knocked out very, very cheaply, and then go to the University of Georgia or North Carolina once you know what you want to do, so you can get that degree from that big name school. But, save
that is
half
that
of
is not as
cost.
sexy as the full 4-year experience, Ryan, but boy, is it smart.
Oh, I mean, that's just the way I think it should be. But I digress. Let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk college type stuff all the time.
That might be a whole other show.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get into the debate and the topic of should you take a year off of school before going to college, and or that we could even go down the road of a year of military service before college and that kind of thing. I think all those things would be interesting to explore a little bit, especially with now a little bit more perspective on the other side of college now, several years separated from graduation.
That would be a great show, and we could talk about some people need to do the School of Hard Knocks to figure out, hey, maybe I do want to go to school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important to think about. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the academic approach to investing and saving and planning for retirement that Ryan talks about here on The Pilot's Advisor? Well, if so, go visit pilotsadvisor.com. pilotsadvisor.com. You can watch a quick webinar on the academic approach to investing. It'll show you how not to speculate and gamble with your money. It's all based on Nobel Prize winning research. Only takes about 10 minutes to get through the video and watch it. Going to be worth your time, I promise you. Go check it out right now, pilotsadvisor.com. It's a webinar that covers that academic approach to investing. pilotsadvisor.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so last one, another assumption that people make when it comes to retirement. We can end it with this one. And this is just the assumption, Ryan, that I'll never be able to retire. It's a little bit of this like defeatist attitude. Like there's just this feeling of overwhelming, I'll just never get there.
Well, sadly, I look at a lot of people and I think they may never be able to retire, but it's because they're not paying themselves first. I think we discuss this on the show quite often, but time is the biggest factor in all this. And so even if you're not making much, just start putting money away in your 20s and 30s, and it'll make all the difference later on in life. Obviously it's easier to build a nest egg if you start early, but even if you're behind, and this sounds like a normal conversation that I'd have with a client, that doesn't mean you shouldn't, just give up and go, oh, I'll never be able to retire, I'm not going to save. Well, that's not a solution. I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ryan. And I've heard a couple of people say this, even in my own family, that I'll never be able to retire, and it just seems so bleak. And then when you actually run the numbers, it's kind of eye-opening. Oh, okay, I didn't need $1 million to retire. My situation's not the same as somebody else's. Turns out I only need, this amount to comfortably retire. And all of a sudden they go from, I'll never be able to retire, to they've got a retirement date set 3 years from now. And then that light's at the end of the tunnel and the disposition is suddenly sunny again. It makes a big difference in life. And it's just really was sitting down, putting pen to paper and really figuring out the numbers. That's all it took.
Well, I just had a conversation yesterday, and it was with a teacher, and she was talking, she was like, oh my God, Ryan, I'm never going to be able to retire, my kids, I can't really, she felt like she couldn't really save more, and she's in a position where she has to, be a little bit more aggressive to be in a better position to actually be able to retire. And we were talking about it because, we make assumptions about, her, if you're a teacher and you do a certain number of years of service, you have a pension, and she goes, well, I just don't know if that pension is going to be there. And it brought up an interesting conversation because I think this is something that we're also dealing with. And it's the same with Social Security, with pensions, that times are changing so quickly now and what's going on with our federal government. A lot of people, we're making assumptions that a certain percentage of their income is going to be there. And I think our benefits are probably going to be a little bit reduced. So it brings up another little scary part of retirement planning.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ryan. All of these assumptions are popular, but incorrect in most cases. And so that's why we want to make sure that you get a plan put together, have a conversation with somebody that'll help uncover these things. And this isn't the full list. There's other things that people make assumptions about that can take you down a wrong path when it comes to planning if you're not careful. So talk to Ryan if any of these things are true about your line of thinking when it comes to retirement. We're not trying to publicly humiliate anybody like I was up in front of the class back in the day. This is just good to bring awareness to these things. It's bad to assume, especially with our life savings and our finances. Make sure you're getting solid financial plans put in place. And that's why Ryan offers a portfolio MRI. If you haven't been through that process before, you can get a good, strong look at your financial plan, where some of the deficiencies are, and where, since Ryan's getting ready to do some knee work, where there might need to be some repair to your financial plan, and maybe some replacement in some cases. And you can look at those things and figure that out and get a good path and direction forward. If you want to get in touch with Ryan, here's the way to do it. Call or text 843-475-3038. That's 843-475-3038. And also online at FlemingFG.com. Ryan, sorry to use your upcoming knee surgery so lightly as a segue to talking about why people should call you, but it just seemed like a natural link.
I will be around, that's for sure.
You're an easy-going enough guy. I figured you wouldn't mind. Hey, before we wrap up the episode, Ryan, something kind of exciting is coming up. You have embarked on a new partnership with a group called Pilot Tax. Zach Smith, he's going to be joining us for an upcoming podcast to talk a little bit more about the partnership. And since we're kind of heading into, we're in the midst of tax season, and that tax filing date will be around the corner for many of us. Tell us a little bit about this partnership and what to expect in the coming year.
Well, I first have to laugh at the fact that you said exciting stuff and exciting taxes. Everybody loves taxes. It's a great time of year. But no, here at the Pilot's Advisor, one of our goals is to continue to be a more holistic planner and fill in some of those squares to help our clients more and more. And one of those things has always been coming up is taxes. And after interviewing, 10 to 12 firms, we've affiliated ourselves with a firm called Pilot Tax. It's a full CPA service. Anybody can use them, but they do cater to pilots. And so it's a perfect match. And we're going to get Zach on the podcast so you guys can all get introduced to him and maybe ask some of the biggest tax questions that, are the most commonly asked and see where we go.
I feel like if I say the words exciting and taxes enough times next to each other, it'll just sink in and everybody will find them exciting at some point.
Well, when you say exciting, the first thing I think of is taxes.
That's the link we're trying to create. So there you go. I've already been successful with you, and now we'll see if our listeners can jump on board with the idea as well. But no, in all seriousness, I think it'll be an interesting conversation, at least, with Zach, and to have him on board, and glad that you will have that partnership with them going forward from the CPA side of things. So there you have it. Ryan, my friend, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you again on the next episode.
Sounds good, Walter. You have a good one.
All right, you as well. That's Ryan Fleming. I'm Walter Storholt. We'll talk to you next time right back here on The Pilot's Advisor. You've been listening to The Pilot's Advisor, featuring Ryan Fleming, a financial advisor at Fleming Financial Group, serving clients worldwide, but based out of Charleston, South Carolina. If you have any questions for Ryan on what we've talked about on today's show, maybe a future topic idea, or want to talk more about getting a complimentary review of your financial plan, here's the best ways to get in touch. You can go online to the website FlemingFG.com. That's FlemingFG.com. You can also email Ryan. It's simply Ryan@FlemingFG.com. Or you can call or text to get in touch. 843-475-3038 is the number. That's 843-475-3038. Thanks for listening to The Pilot's Advisor, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting apps. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and many more locations. So whatever app you like to use, search for The Pilot's Advisor podcast today and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.